record button. There we go. We are recording now. Okay, thank you everybody for coming. We really appreciate it. As we get started tonight, I want to call out, we do have a few of the board members with us tonight. We've got Andy Purr, who's our vice president, Susan Strank, Melinda Jacobson, Diane Vincent, Cheryl Bishop, and Leanne Seaman. They all work very hard behind the scenes, along with some consulting from Nancy Rahauser. Thank you. We always appreciate all your hard work. I do want to, before we dive into April, just call out that we have a meeting coming up in May that will be very exciting. It's going to be 3 city council members. We had said when we did the candidate forum last fall that we would be following up with the members of the council that were elected in order to talk about public safety issues. And we're going to do that. We have had acceptance from all of the council members we invited from districts 4, 5, and 6. So we've got council members Rivera, Moore, and Strauss have all confirmed their attendance. Tonight, Chris, do you have a very quick question? We don't normally take questions at this time. Can you put your hand down? Or okay, great. We do questions as we go along. We're doing things a little out of sync tonight because our speaker, she's very generously talking to us tonight. She's already been doing one presentation already today, so she'll be with us just a little later. And so we are going to start with the captain's report. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Captain Agard.
Okay, I get to go first. Wow. All right, so update for North Precinct. First we'll start with the crime stat update. Overall, looking at both categories, the violent crime and the property crime combined in one. If you look at the overall crime year to date for 24, crime is down 6%. If you break it down and look at violent crime, which is homicide, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, that is up 16% year to date. One of the categories that's pushing that up is robbery. Robbery's up 33%. And looking at incidents, that means that looking at the same time last year, we have 29 more robberies in the North Precinct than last year. One of the categories is that we've been having a lot of in the North End are bank robberies. Not so much armed ones. We've had some armed ones, but it's more suspects coming in and passing a note demanding money. I think we've had like 3 different suspects doing those around the North Precinct. Property crime is down 6%. Burglary within that is down 7%. And larceny theft is down 19%. So those categories are all down. The only property crime that remains high is motor vehicle theft is still up 23%. So far this year in the North Precinct, we've had 736 cars stolen year to date. And if you look at last year, at this time last year, there was 597. So that still remains high, and that's a citywide statistic that is remaining high for all the precincts. Shots fired. Shots fired is one of those categories right now that is up citywide. Year to date for the North Precinct, it's up 38% with 40 shots fired this year compared to 29 last year. And for those that haven't heard me explain it before, when you're saying shots fired, they break it down into 3 categories. Shots fired with casings found, witnesses or property damage, and then shots fired with a victim that is like shot in the leg but is not a homicide, so just assaulted, and then fatal shots. So it's broken down like that. So if someone is just reporting like shots in the area, officers respond, and maybe it's fireworks, maybe it's shots, but we don't find casings, a witness, or a victim, that does not go into the data. So these are confirmed shots fired cases. Looking at, I did little map. Our map shows where the shots are going on. Is kind of, some are spread around the precinct. There's several in the U district, but the main one remains that cluster on Aurora from like 85th up to 105, between like 105 right in there. That's the cluster of shots that makes up the most shots fired in the North Precinct. There was a discussion today at our CSTAT. It was kind of interesting because one of the theories, and it makes sense, is that they're getting these Glock, they're called Glock switches on the guns, and they're just a little device that they put on their Glocks. But when they put them on the gun, it makes them fully automatic. So instead of having just pop, it's a fully automatic gun that they're getting to put on these Glock switches. So that kind of, the theory is that that's why we're getting more shots fired with these individual incidents too. Let's see, I believe the average right now is 7. When there is a shots fired incident, the average shots fired on each incident is 7, which is higher than it has been in the past. So shots fired, they're shooting more rounds at each event. So I asked where they're getting these switches, and I was told that they make them on those 3D printers. So it's not something they're buying. They can make them on these 3D printers. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Let's see. We are putting extra cars out on Aurora still, 105 in Aurora. When we can, we put what's called 09 cars out on Aurora, kind of like an emphasis, but they're assigned to that area to deter crime and shots fired. Updates on some things here. The homicide at 105 and Aurora, right there at the AM/PM there. They did arrest the suspect in that shooting, that fatal shooting, murder, and booked him for murder. The suspects in the Lake City home invasions were arrested. They were also suspects in numerous home invasions around Kitsap County and Snohomish County. So they were very active, and they were booked as well. I'm sure most of you have heard about the homicide on the freeway where the 2 juveniles were found murdered alongside the freeway. Because it was on the freeway, State Patrol is investigating right now the murder of those 2 juveniles. And this happened a couple weeks ago, and I don't have an update on that. They're still investigating that, but they do believe it's gang related. April 25th, I wanted to mention April 25th, Councilmember Moore is going to have has organized a public safety forum at the Bitter Lake Community Center. So those that want to attend that, put that on your calendar. And that's what I got. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, anything I can answer for you? I see there's 3 in the chat here. Let me check this.
So one comment is about the 3D printers, and that's frightening. Is that something you're seeing more commonly now?
Yes, I asked. We have our Intel guys that are just super active, and let me close this chat now. Why didn't I cancel? Yeah, and I asked, I'm like, where are they getting these things that make it fully automatic? And yeah, they make them on these 3D printers.
Wow.
Yeah. And and the other thing we talked about was our homicide rate is down, and our shots fired is up. And I guess when you, another theory is that when you put these that make the fully automatic, when they put them on the guns, it makes them less accurate because it's harder to aim when you have the automatic fire. So they're thinking, you know, the shots fired is up, but their aim is down. So that might be part of the reason the homicide rates are down.
Henry from Councilmember Moore's office has put the information about the forum in the chat. So that's there. That's great.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. And I know Councilmember Rivera is going to be doing a safety walk down in Sandpoint as well. And that is sometime, I believe, in May. I don't have the date on that. I don't know if there's anyone here from her office that can confirm the date, but that will be a fun event coming up as well.
Okay. Alex makes a comment, the bus stop at 105th and Aurora by the AM/PM looks like a non-stop drug dealing user zone. What can be done about this type of stuff?
Well, we have the new drug law where if officers see drug use going on in public, they can detain them and arrest them and then refer them to lead. So we do that when time allows up there. And when we have the 09 cars up there, they're supposed to be kind of doing that as well. What time frame are you seeing them up there the most? I know that is a super active area. What time do you see them up there the most? Do you have a time frame?
So Alex, can you plunk that into the chat?
7. Okay. Yeah, that's about when we get our 09 cars up there. And yeah, it's just a matter of staffing and being able to be available to, you know, stop them, arrest them, refer them to lead. It takes time. It depends on the night, on what other calls are going on. So yeah, we realize that's our flashpoint area. It is a very problem area there.
Let's take one live one from Rudy. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, Captain, what's going on with these construction site burglaries and copper theft, extensive copper theft that's happening in North Seattle?
You know, I'm not familiar with that. I think is Officer Cruzan, are you on the call? I can't see it.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yep.
You know anything about that?
We're seeing several reports of those come in weekly. A lot of it's, as you said, Rudy, vacant construction sites with tools and equipment left on site, or they're partially going through the laying the pipe and setting the copper. So they're make easy targets. We encourage them to get some security if possible, things like that. And the officers patrol the areas, the hard hit areas as available. It's the same thing though, but it's like all property crimes. It's a very difficult thing right now for the city, entire city.
And one other thing, Captain, I'm cleaning up around that 105th, 101st, 98th, and I'm pretty brave doing that stuff. I just want you to know that I see a lot of stuff that I just can't call 911. We've got people smoking on our gas meters in the alley, and I go up to them and I tell them, I don't think that's a good idea. If you like smoking fentanyl, I wouldn't smoke it on that gas meter. I take it up there if you want to like getting high. Otherwise, you're putting us all at risk. But I have to use a little charm with these people because they're not all nice, and
yeah,
I mean they're really not. And try waking them up and checking to see if they're alive. That's even worse. They want to kill me. I mean, oh my God. Oh hey, I'm just checking to see if you're alive. But anyway, thank you. That's all I wanted to ask.
Yeah, no, I mean, we know that that when you wake people up, they can wake up very hostile. So be careful, Rudy, with that.
And we'll see you at sandwich night next week.
I will be there Tuesday,
you,
right?
Captain.
Yeah. I will be there for sure.
Yeah, lots of people wake up angry even if they're not on drugs. right?
No, this
Yeah.
is really
Without that
bad though.
coffee.
No, this is bad.
No, I understand. I wasn't trying to dismiss it in any way. We've got another one from the chat. Susan asks, sorry if I missed you saying this, Captain. Is the gun violence mostly gang related?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Is the gun violence mostly gang related?
Yes, yes, it's mostly gang related and a large portion are juveniles. Yes, and it was interesting. They were talking today, the detectives, about how, they track a lot of these juveniles, and a lot of the ones they're tracking, a percentage of them are going to be turning 18. So then they can be charged as adults and get higher consequences. But yes, it's a large portion is gang related and juveniles.
Okay. Sarah points out, Sarah Lawson with the Crime Prevention Unit is contacting Transit Security through King County KCSO, can also assist by requesting transit security be posted at the bus stop. I didn't say that very well, but it's in the chat, folks. So that's another way to get help.
Yeah, and they're supposed to, when you see their cars out, because you'll see them driving around once in a while, they're supposed to be patrolling the bus stops, because that is kind of their area of jurisdiction there.
Great. Let's see. Oh, Andy asked, any info on activity at 11th Avenue Northeast and Northeast 55th? It was either yesterday morning or Monday morning, several officers and SFB. 11th Northeast and Northeast 55th.
Yeah, what was that? There was an arrest there. And there was because a lot of cars went to it. It was a fast backup. They were struggling with someone to get them handcuffed. I don't remember what it was about. I'm sure Officer Krazan will pop up if he remembers, or maybe you can check the SIR there for me, Mike. But yeah, there was something going on there. It wasn't anything endangering the community, but there was an arrest there.
I believe it was an assault on an officer as well during the arrest. So
During the
that,
arrest.
yeah, that enhanced the response a little bit. But again, it was, resolved relatively peacefully, and nothing really came at the end. I'll look up the actual incident number and see what we have for it.
Okay, thank you. And
But-
then, oh, go ahead, Mike. If anyone lives up near the Dicks on Holman Road, past Holman Road up there on 13th, I don't know if anyone saw the big response there the day before yesterday. We had about a 10 hours SWAT response up there with a male in crisis that barricaded himself in his apartment, wouldn't come out. Hostage negotiators negotiated with him for hours. We sent robots in to, see what he was doing. He put the robot in the bathtub, drowned it, started trying to light the apartment on fire. So they evacuated a lot of the people in the building, shut off the electricity and water to the apartment. SWAT eventually was able to get him out by coming in through the door. They saw the door open, go in, and then he barricaded himself in the bathroom. And they were able to put a camera through to see what he was doing in there. And then he was starting to burn the toilet paper and there was more smoke. So finally they were able to get him out. But that was if anyone lives up there, that's what was going on that day.
Okay. Let's take a live question. Chris, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. And apologies, this is my first meeting, so may not have the protocol, but our house was burglarized last week, last Monday, while people were home. It's the third time that our property has been burglarized in the last 3 years. The first 2 times were the garage. This is the first time people have advanced into the house itself, and it was very disturbing that it happened while my teenage sons were home alone after they had had dinner. I mean, we filed police reports in every instance. I live in the Bryant Heights development down by 65th and 68th, near 35th. And this seems to be an area that is drawing an awful lot of repeated property crimes, but I don't know if anybody in our development is actively reporting them. You know, the last time the garage was broken into, the entire row, the entire alley of garages was broken into together on one night. But as far as I know, I was the only one who reported it. I can't ask for updates on the case. I know it's property crime. There's really nothing that can be done. Though we did get, we've got video, but no evidence. We have somebody who has seen the person afterward in the street, but there's no way to make a statement about it unless you have a suspect for her to recognize in a lineup. I guess the questions I have are, one, what would it take to have a more visible patrol presence within kind of that box lower down in the north end, between 55th, between 25th and 35th, between 65th and 75th north? That square has got an awful lot of the break-ins. Especially, there's something about our complex, probably that it's new construction, that is driving a lot of repeat business over these last 4 years. And it also coincides with a lot of the car break-ins that are happening around this very neighborhood.
So Chris,
I'm wondering, are they the same people? Is there any sort of audit service that the police department can do to help a neighborhood actually assess what it is that's driving it and what we can do to make ourselves safer and less easy to be targets?
so I'm going to let the captain weigh in, but I also want to point out that our crime prevention team have their hand up. They'd like to speak too. So whichever one of you would like to go first. You want to go first, Sarah and Kate? Caitlin?
Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead, guys.
Thank you, Captain. Thank you so much for having us tonight. So Chris, first off, hi. I am your crime prevention coordinator. So I do all of Northeast Seattle. Caitlin here does all of Northwest Seattle. You mentioned that, some people aren't reporting. That is the first step with any crime. Right now, it's no secret that our staffing is down. We are matching the commitment of the people that are reporting to be able to come out and investigate those incidents. But we can't go up to every person and ask if they've been a victim of a crime. And I'm looking at our last 28-day map right here on my other screen. We're not seeing in that one block of area the huge rise in crime that you're describing. That's not to discount that it's not happening, but if our reports don't reflect that, it is really hard for me to be able to go to the captain and be like, hey, look, I'm seeing a spike in my area. Can we offer more? Can we get a couple extra patrols? Can we get some of the 09 cars to do some extra emphasis? It's hard for me to make that ask without the data to back that up, as we do have limited resources right now. So all of our data needs to be able to show that it's an effective use of our resources. And without those reports, then we're kind of hard up. So I do want to encourage you to make that report. Yes, your report is going to go into the system. It will be reviewed by an officer, and odds are we probably won't catch the guy right away. But you never know if your case is going to be the one puzzle piece that we need to connect a lot of different cases in the area. Because maybe you have footage, somebody else has footage, and we can make the connection that it's the same person. And that way, if we, have two, sides of a person, we can kind of maybe see, oh, that's Jeff. We know Jeff. Jeff did that crime. And our officers might know this person, where we can go and actually contact Jeff.
Let me be clear. I have filed the report. I've submitted the video and all of that. I did that for the garage break-ins each time as well. I have a funny feeling that many of my neighbors are kind of a certain flavor of tech bro for whom no problem can't be solved with another Tesla and some more cameras, So these, just in the comments here, you've got one other person in the neighborhood who said they were also burglarized. They're in the same complex and they're curious to know more about it. I guess the issue is, having filed it, hoping that yes, it might create a data trail so that if you ever do pick the guy up for something else, you'll be able to use this against him and build a better case. My question is, what is driving the repeat shopping in our homes on this block? Because it's multiple times over many years now. I have videos of people casing the house at night.
Chris?
Is there some
Go ahead, Mia. Yeah.
sort of consultative service that the police department offers to do sort of the safety equivalent of the home energy, efficiency survey?
Chris, I'm going to pause you there. I'm sorry, I muted you. We need to have other questions answered too, but I think probably Sarah and Caitlin have a couple things to finish this up with.
So first off is the question of, do we have this service where, can we come out and take a look at your home, see if there's any areas of weakness where you can possibly make an improvement? Yes, that is a main job of what we do. It's called SEPTED, where we use crime prevention through environmental design. We actually just did one today for a house in the Laurel Horse neighborhood. I'm happy to do one for each and every one of your neighbors to kind of see how we can fortify your homes. It can be simple fixes that maybe people are overlooking, but we like to say criminals choose the path of least resistance. And if they got an easy score off of one house once, they're more prone to go back to that house unless kind of fortifications are made, because to them it was easy, easy takings. It sucks that they're thinking that way, and it sucks that unfortunately for your area, they're thinking that these houses are easy targets. So I'm gonna put my email in the chat. Please reach out. I'm happy to connect, and I'd love to be able to beef up the security in your area. So again, we're kind of moving the problem on to a different area, but at least your area can kind of be a little bit less affected by this. And potentially we want to encourage you to continue to report and kind of make your own home improvements. And my job is to basically improve all of Northeast Seattle. So I've got a big job to do, but we can start with your neighborhood and kind of go from there. I'm happy to connect, but I do want to make sure we're respectful of everyone's time. We're moving this along, so I'm going to put my email in the chat. Captain, did you have any additional words to share to Chris?
I mean, when they enter your home and there's someone there, that ups the level of urgency, when they're entering homes, when they know people are home, that makes them more dangerous. So, Ring cameras are the way. If we can get a shot of someone, we put that out to the precinct and then see if any officers know them. So really, if the cameras are the best way to catch these guys, because without footage, it's really, unless you catch them in the act, there's not a lot of follow-up.
I'm going to just insert here this, we need to keep moving that.
Yeah.
I really want to emphasize the service that you can get from SPD, from the crime prevention team. And the other piece, and why we've lingered on this more than we probably had time for, but if you report crimes, you create a record. One of the things NPAC keeps talking about with our participants is you've got to report it. It might be irritating, we get it, but report it, because nobody can see that there's a pattern unless somebody creates a pattern. So look for the information, and anybody on this call or this meeting, take a look. Remember, you can reach out and have your house checked, maybe organize your neighborhood, whatever. It's a great thing to do. So I'm going to choose a couple more things. Our speaker is here, so just a couple more minutes, and then let me just, let's see. Really, it's kind of, I guess it's more of the same. There was another question about some of the gun violence.
Didn't
Megan
Council
said,
Member Rivera say something? I saw that flash through, that she was having audio problems, but
she is, but we're not able to, unfortunately, address that.
Okay. I think she was interested to know about the neighborhood crime issue that Chris brought up.
Yeah, it sounds to me like she has either audio or visual. Okay. And this is recorded for everybody. Megan references, she heard the shootings on Aurora was a turf war with the pimps. Is that correct? Have you heard anything about that?
I mean, that's a lot of the shootings up there is between the pimps. I don't know what one she's referring to. I believe the 105 in Aurora, I think that was an unintended victim, if I am correct on that one, but a lot of the shootings up there are, yes, between PIMS.
Okay. Okay, so I think, and we've got the information now in there from the crime prevention folks. I think we've gotten through most of the questions. So some great conversation. Again, the thing we just can't emphasize enough is it's so important to report and then to
Yes.
reach out for the crime prevention team. I will ask one more follow-up, which you know I'm going to ask every darn month, and that is whether or not the online reporting tool has been updated yet, or what's the status?
It's still in process. I was hoping to get good news for you guys today at our CSTAT meeting this morning, but it is not implemented yet. But you know, they keep saying soon, so
okay,
soon.
Well, if there's somebody else you want me to start bugging, I would be more than happy to do that. I can.
It's not that they're not trying. It's the IT part of it that is having bugs, and they don't want to launch it until it's fully functional.
Yeah. I think that in a techie place like the Puget Sound region, getting that to work would encourage a lot more people to go ahead and do something online because they don't want to wait on hold. So
I completely agree with you on that. Yes.
yeah, great.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much, Captain.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome.
I see that our speaker, Kaylee DiMaggio, has arrived, so let me adjust that spotlight. Find Kaylee in the mix. Kaylee, if you want to, there you are, you're unmuted and ready to go. I'm going to I'm going to make you a co-host so that you can show whatever slides you would like.
Thank you.
And I'm going to spotlight you. You are on. And I just want to thank you again so much. I understand you did a presentation just a little while ago. I hope you had a little break for dinner or something. But we thank you very much for making the time to talk to us tonight. So it's all yours. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I was just presenting to the social work department in Harborview, which went really great. So now I'm feeling energized and ready to keep talking about it. So my name is Kaylee DiMaggio. As you can see, I am the supervisor of the victim support team. And I'm going to share with you tonight about primarily the victim support team program, but also a little bit about where we're situated for context and kind of the work our larger unit does, because it's definitely connected. And then happy to field questions and chat with whatever else you guys want to know. So I am going to share my screen, so give me a moment to do that. All right. All right, is that looking good to everybody? Okay, fantastic.
Yes.
So the victim support team is a part of the Human Services Department, but you'll hear the sort of the history of having previously been a part of the police department for many, many years and still working close in partnership with them. And then the unit that I'm in, and there's a lot of language and acronyms repeated, and so don't worry about any of that, but just to give you some context, is the Crime Survivor Services unit. So I have a little bit of a visual here to help you get a bird's eye view. The Crime Survivor Services unit is newer. It became a thing in 2020 when we were transferred from the police department to the Human Services Department. And this work of both teams existed previously, but just wasn't integrated and didn't work together like we do now. So just briefly, and again, I'll get further into both of these things, but the victim support team where I supervise has two distinct entities. We have a Monday through Friday staff of 2 full-time advocates. So we call them the victim service specialists. And then I also oversee a really special program of community volunteers, and they're operating on the weekends, providing services citywide to do mobile crisis response in close partnership with SPD. And then what we call our sister team is the crime victim advocates. And that staff has currently 2 supervisors over it, and then 13 advocates providing criminal justice system based advocacy. So they're not working short term like the VST volunteers and staff. They're doing advocacy through the life of a criminal case, which can be many, many years through the adjudication of a case. And they're specifically working on felony level crimes in Seattle. So I'll share a little bit about the crime victim advocates next, and then we'll really do a deep dive on the victim support team. So the crime victim advocates team, all of the advocates were previously distributed in different investigative units within the police department, and they reported to sworn leadership. And so now, as a part of this larger team, they have civilian leadership, and they're no longer siloed, but they're working together on a larger team with sort of peers doing the same kind of work, but maybe within a different crime type. So and then 3 in the violent crimes team, which primarily is working on homicide cases and serious assaults. We, on average, oh, sorry guys, I'm getting an unstable internet blip, so I'm sorry if I
Just gonna
froze.
say you sort of froze there for a moment, but
I apologize. My internet has just been a little finicky tonight, so I will probably abruptly pause if I see that message, and I apologize for any glitchiness. I can also go off camera if that would help, but I'll try to stay on camera for now. So the advocates on this team have really heavy caseloads. On average, the national best practices is 75 cases, but they have around 150 cases, sometimes up to 200. That has gotten better as we've increased some staffing. We're getting closer to better caseload sizes, but in 2023, that team of 13 people worked on over 2,800 cases. This is like a super quick overview, but the advocates on this team are embedded within the different units investigating these crimes at SPD. So they're co-located. Basically, they have their desk space at Seattle Police Headquarters and then also work kind of hybrid schedules, and some are in person at our office at Seattle Municipal Tower, but mostly they're working from police headquarters or from home. They're going to court a lot, so that's a lot of what their in-person work entails. They're getting the cases at slightly different times. Some of them are getting them as soon as they're assigned to a detective for investigation. Others are getting the cases, different crime types get them when they're filed. And so their collaboration also extends heavily to working with the prosecuting attorney's office. So they're really accompanying survivors of crime through the whole court process and making sure survivors' voices are uplifted at every stage, that they know what hearings are coming up, what their rights are to be heard at different hearings. If someone doesn't want to speak for themselves, our advocates can read their statements in different situations, and they're really there to kind of help with all that navigation between all the moving parts and all of the different kind of complicated layers that are going on with their case. So that team, is often inundated with those court responsibilities. And if there is like a crisis point that flares up at some point in the middle of all of that, then they can refer that case to the victim support team to address those needs. So I'm going to start to talk about the victim support team now, which is really my home zone and where I've worked my whole career. So I started with the victim support team in 2010 as a civilian employee of the Seattle Police Department. I was actually an AmeriCorps volunteer that year and did advocacy directly. And then since then have moved on to do kind of the support role of where I don't do victim advocacy myself anymore, but I supervise the staff and advocate volunteers that do, as well as sort of manage the program and the resources that we handle and the different elements. So our program, sort of in juxtaposition to that long-term advocacy, is really specifically short-term. And we are most focused on the crimes of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. Historically, since we started, we were really, really focused on domestic violence only, and it's only been in the last 5 years or so that we've started to expand to these other gender-based violence crimes. Our services are really aiming to help survivors feel empowered and to put their safety concerns and wishes first. So every different player in the system has their own kind of goals and agenda. Ours is not to, be committed to or invested in or prescribing that survivors are reporting to law enforcement, participating in a criminal investigation or in a court case. We're really there to show up for what the survivor needs and specifically around their sort of safety and next steps resource needs. I already mentioned about our role in the Human Services Department, but specifically we're in a new division. So in 2020, we were not just kind of forming a new team of crime survivor services, but we were also part of the formation of a new division, which is the Safe and Thriving Communities Division. There are 3 units in that division. The other 2 are grants and contracts unit. So they're funding the community efforts to address gun violence and gender-based violence in a variety of ways. And then we're the direct service kind of arm of that new division. So a little bit more about the history of the victim support team. We've been around since the mid-90s, and at that time we really formed because there was this market gap in time over the weekend when the rest of the system response and community-based resources were generally not available. And if a domestic violence survivor calls 911 and maybe if there's a police response or an arrest made, then that weekend of time where someone could make different choices about what they want to do next to seek safety or to leave the situation or whatever it might be, no one was there to support them in that moment, in that window of time. And so we formed in partnership with SPD. And our program was able to do that kind of unique response in a moment of time when civilians are like civilian resource support staff and social workers were not otherwise able to meet that family where they were at. So we were able to be brought in on scene by police after an incident had happened and really show up in that crisis to offer those services and support to survivors. So I have a little video. Let's see if it works. And the sound should be shared, but let me know if someone could flag me if it's not audible.
VST 22 on West Air.
VST 22, this is 3 Queen 2. Any chance that I can get you to respond to my team just to evaluate what services you may or not might have for a victim we have here?
Hi, I'm Dana Lockhart, Program Manager of the Victim Support Team. Every weekend, VST volunteers pack food, clothing, diapers, and community resources in unmarked police vehicles and respond to secure crime scenes to assist victims of domestic violence and their children. Working with the Seattle Police Department, VST volunteers prevent future violence by supporting the survivors at a critical time. Volunteers give information, resources, and emotional support during the weekend hours. This is the time when domestic violence calls are the greatest. From across a kitchen table or in an ER hospital room at 2 a.m., you show that domestic violence is a community concern. Each year, the VST volunteers respond to almost 500 calls for service. Their efforts have saved the Seattle Police Department countless hours of follow-up and have directly enhanced the department's response to victims of violence.
Hi, I'm Carmen Best, Deputy Chief of the Seattle Police Department. The VST is a valuable resource to patrol officers. This is a nationally recognized program that has worked closely with all of the members of the Seattle Police Department to provide services to victims of domestic violence that, quite frankly, patrol officers are just too busy to provide. Those services are of vital importance to victims of domestic violence at a time when they are hardest to access.
Is the boyfriend that assaulted still outside? Yeah, he's outside. Okay. Caller has a DV assault victim inside his cell. She was being assaulted in front of a set of weapons.
VST teams are often called to assist families who are facing devastating circumstances of survival, seemingly overwhelming obstacles, and are living in fear. These families often feel isolated and alone. Through creative advocacy and strong community partnerships, it is the goal of the VST program to empower victims with options and resources to overcome the barriers that prevent them from achieving a life free of violence.
All right, so that's a very outdated video with a previous chief and also slightly outdated stats, but I'll give you the updated numbers shortly. But hopefully that gives you a good visual of sort of some of the core ways that our volunteer program functions in partnership with police on the weekends. And I'll talk a little bit more about our operations as well. Oh, sorry, let's go to the next slide. Okay. But just to spell out a little bit more about how we approach our advocacy, both our staff advocates and volunteers are really there to listen and let a survivor kind of lead them as the expert of their own life towards what their goals are and their priorities and urgent needs. And then we try our best within the scope of our role to address immediate safety concerns and potentially resource concerns and get someone connected to those longer term supports. So whatever in the system or in the community that might meet a survivor's needs, we're able to kind of bridge that by making referrals and connections. Within that, what we're doing a lot of is creative safety planning, like Dana mentioned in the video. All of our advocates are approaching their role from a place of being trauma informed and offering emotional support. That's part of how we listen and receive survivors, response to what they're going through. We also kind of tangibly can do a variety of things. And so on the weekends, volunteers in that unmarked vehicle, as you saw in the video, can provide transportation within city limits. But we also utilize Uber. We can support people with relocating depending on what's going on. And if that is what will help them be the safest, is to go to Tacoma to stay with our aunt or to go across the mountains. We could buy a bus ticket or a train ticket and sometimes plane tickets out of state or country, depending on what someone's plan is. We do a lot of searching for safe places to stay. So that can be through shelter, through friends and family, or through a hotel. Often that's what's going on in someone's life as they're kind of making decisions and what's going on after an incident. And then, like I mentioned, we're really like listening for what is relevant to someone's life and just offering things and never prescribing someone that they should follow up with a certain agency or take a certain step, but just again laying out the menu of potential things that they could consider and assess if it's the best fit for them. We make it very clear in our interactions with everybody that our services are totally optional, as well as non-confidential. So that means that because we're connected to the police department and because we're a government agency, our notes can be subpoenaed for a criminal case. We could be potentially requested to testify as a witness. We work really hard and are mostly successful at keeping our staff and advocates out of court in that way. But we have to pass on any additional evidence if it's disclosed about the incident. So we work really hard to communicate the parameters of our role so that we're not getting put in the position that's going to compromise survivors' experience in the future, that we want to be able to maintain our role as advocates. And we let people know that just because we're non-confidential doesn't mean that we won't keep their information private, but there are a lot of confidentiality layers to what we're doing. It's just within the system specifically where we don't have legal privilege like an attorney or a therapist or a doctor would. And hopefully that makes sense. I'm happy to answer follow-up questions about that. And then specifically who requests our services. So while we have a very strong and long-term established, foundational really partnership with SPD, we get referrals from not just patrol to the volunteer teams, but also from detectives, from prosecutors, ER social workers, like I mentioned, who I was just meeting with, community service officers, and different system and community-based advocates. But the biggest new sort of slice of that pie chart for us in terms of utilization has actually become self-referrals. So when victims or family members of victims are reaching out directly requesting for a response. We don't track if they first got the information about our program from patrol or from an ER social worker, et cetera. So we're not kind of doing that second layer. But in general, if someone's calling or emailing us directly, we're logging them as a self-referral. So that's been a pretty marked change in the last 4 years or so. And I think this was evident in the video, but I think one of the unique ways that we can get utilized is on the weekends when volunteers, they're on the radio and they can be dispatched to a domestic violence or another kind of scene to assess, what someone's needs are once it's been secured by patrol. So volunteers cannot be on the scene if the suspect is at large, not in custody, if patrol have to leave. So there's different parameters that kind of govern their ability to respond in that way, but that is a unique thing that volunteers in particular can do. So let me talk a little bit more about that. So volunteers are stationed out of East Precinct. So we used to work out of North and South Precinct, kind of rotating. And then probably about 5 or 6 years ago, we kind of centralized at East Precinct. We still have like cabinets full of supplies at different precincts, and we respond just as much to all 5 precincts per any requests that come through, but just kind of as a starting point where our vehicle is and kind of where we have an office for volunteers to work out of. It's out of East. Typically, they're not just doing in-person call outs, they're very much spending time on their shifts making phone calls. And so they're always triaging what incoming referrals are and kind of prioritizing them based on lethality and different factors and following up on cases and reaching out to people proactively to see what their needs are and kind of working with whatever is coming up for them. But then they're also, at the start of that shift, getting logged into the radio, like I mentioned, and getting their car packed full of the different resources and equipment and car seats and supplies. And then at any point, once they are logged in, dispatch can potentially, show that they're on and patrol can respond or request their response rather over the radio. And that can happen like immediately, that can happen a bunch of times in a shift, or that can happen no times in a shift. So every volunteer shift is unique in the sense of like what combination of things are going on and how busy they are and how urgent everything is. There are certainly slower shifts where volunteers are just chatting with each other and they've made their priority calls, or maybe it's too late to make phone calls and they're just hanging out and getting snacks and maybe visiting the precincts to say hi to officers and then waiting to respond if something comes through. So volunteers kind of have to be ready to do a whole bunch of different potential things at any given time. And like we mentioned, they're driving a vehicle that's got a variety of car seats in case they have to transport children. Sometimes they have to supervise children while CPS is en route. After officers clear a scene, they might bring kiddos back to the precinct, and volunteers are stocked with different supplies to keep them entertained and change diapers and give them bottles or whatever it might need to be for that family. And so that's kind of how volunteers work on the weekends, and they are then kind of bundling up what they haven't tied up, any like remaining needs, and passing them to our staff advocates. So our staff advocates operate Monday through Friday, and they do a lot of what volunteers do, but slightly different. So they are not logged onto the radio. They are working out of the Seattle Municipal Tower or also from home. We have a hybrid schedule. They are managing short-term caseloads at like a slightly more extensive level, I would say, than the volunteer advocates. So they're primarily doing their advocacy over the phone with occasional in-person requests. Like we're right across the street from Seattle Police Headquarters downtown, so people walk in and have needs. Sometimes they might get asked to go to a hospital with a detective or attend a forensic interview to sit with a family, depending on what our system partners are requesting. But typically they're mostly on the phone. They're just like volunteers triaging whatever's coming in and kind of managing and processing what has recently happened. And then I would say the thing that is the most unique and distinct about the 2 staff advocates is that they're the ones who are really working really closely with our partners. So our crime victim advocate team, the misdemeanor advocates at the city attorney's office, detectives, different community partners, like they're taking those cases to the next step. Maybe the volunteers discuss some of those next steps potentially in conversation, but the advocates are the ones really taking it to that end of like writing the lease break letters, like starting the protection order advocacy application process with survivors. Just addressing questions that are like a little more technical and require a little bit more expertise than maybe volunteers have the threshold to meet those needs. And then just like volunteers, we're doing a lot of resources and referrals during the week, but I think because volunteers are in person, the way that looks for them might be slightly different than with our staff who are more remote. We're sending a lot more like digital gift cards. We can ship things directly to survivors' houses now. And a lot of that has expanded in particular since COVID, when just more things kind of went online and more businesses started to operate with more flexible options like that. I would say historically we were just really more like we had tangible gift cards like in hand that we had to hand someone. And it's really opened up the possibilities for us to be able to meet people's needs in a variety of creative ways. So that's been actually a really exciting development and maybe unexpected outcome or silver lining of the last couple of years. And like I mentioned, they're just doing slightly more extensive advocacy. So maybe volunteers are touching a case once for the course of the weekend, and then our two advocates might work with that person for another couple of weeks, depending on what's going on. And the way that they work together is sometimes what's going on the weekend goes to staff and then goes back to the weekend, or depending on when a case starts and where it goes is all kind of unique. So they're really a fluid team together, but just like slightly distinct focus points. And then one of the services we mentioned, and I think I've kind of spoken to this, but just to really elaborate a little bit further, is like the system navigation piece, because volunteers are in that unique moment of time where law enforcement has responded, and if arrest has just occurred, then if that's never happened before, all of these different processes are going to be initiated and kick off in this family's life. And it's overwhelming and confusing, and it can be unclear like what's going to happen next, like where do they go, what happens with bail, when will they get out, like maybe people want someone to get out or maybe people are terrified. Like everybody's got a different experience of those different systems, initiating, but we kind of can meet them where they're at and shed a little bit of light on what might happen and get them signed up for, there's a service called Vine, which would notify someone when an offender gets released, just start to talk through and plan like what might happen and what do they hope happens and what are they going to do either which way. So that's one of the things that staff and volunteers are really working with people on. And like I mentioned, really the integration within the system is really vital. That our team can, like, if not find the answer ourselves, seek out the people who might be able to find the answer about what's going on with the case. Why did something get dropped, or what's going on next, and just try to help kind of demystify some of what can be so overwhelming with people trying to move through what's going on with their case or not. And then we also provide advocacy around the different like civil legal remedies that exist for people, like court orders, or connect them to resources such as like Sexual Violence Law Center, or neighborhood legal clinics, or just other sources where they might be able to get answers for what's going on with them. We get about over 800 cases a year. So I know in the video I said 500 calls for service. So that has really ticked up each year. And just for a little bit of context of like, what's the balance between cases that volunteers are touching and just staff are handling? And volunteers worked on over half of the cases last year. So they're really making a substantial contribution to advocacy, I would say, in our city's response to violence. And then our staff are doing an amazing job of kind of supporting them and managing those cases for the slightly longer term, short term scope that we hold them. And then for anybody to request services, so like any of you could have this in mind if someone or a neighbor or colleague or whoever is in a situation where they need some support. We are intaking referrals 7 days a week. So between those two teams, these are our operating hours, and it's actually until midnight on Saturdays. So I need to update that, but you can either call our main line and it's a voicemail line, or email our shared inbox. So this is what volunteers and staff are constantly looking at to see requests for services come in. And then lastly, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about our volunteer program, because we are headed into an active recruitment season. And because I think this part of our program is one of my most favorite, and I think it's a really special thing. So volunteers obviously go through a lot of screening and onboarding and training to be able to do this kind of intensive work with people who've experienced trauma and people who are in an extremely vulnerable part of their lives. And so it's a competitive application process. We are accepting applications on a rolling basis, but we are about to hit our active recruitment sort of cycle for 2024. So we're heading into like the calendar year of doing our training academy in the fall. And so that means like in the late spring.
Whoops, you just froze up a bit.
When
There you go.
Oh,
Okay, you're back.
okay. Sorry, I'm back still. Okay. Sorry about that. Everybody who successfully kind of makes it through the interview round and gets invited to attend Academy it's like a cohort of volunteers. And so they go through intensive classroom training for 50 hours while they start the police backgrounding process. So all volunteers are backgrounded at a civilian employee level. It's a very extensive process. And then once they pass backgrounding, they go into field training. And then once a volunteer is an active trained volunteer, they do continue to receive monthly training. And so it's a really big investment. We ask a lot of our community volunteers, but we also pour a lot into them. The whole process is free, all the training and mentorship and professional development that kind of happens in the course of this experience. And then while it's really intense to get involved, it's actually a pretty sustainable commitment moving forward. So we ask that volunteers just commit to the 1 shift a month. And it can be on any weekend and any shift throughout the weekends. You can kind of like make it work with your schedule. I do a lot of, I call it the scheduling dance with volunteers to try to make the commitment work for them. And because they're volunteers and not paid staff, I try to be a gracious and flexible supervisor because I think it's a big deal to dedicate your time, especially to something so intense like this. So I think, most people who go through that process at some point along the way figure out like, is this really a good fit for me in the long run? And the people who it's a good fit for tend to stick around for a long time. So as you can see, the average retention is probably like 4 to 5 years. But we have many, many volunteers who are at the 5, 10, 15, and several up to 20 years. So it's been a joy to have relationships with the team and to see them have relationships with their peers. I think it makes this kind of heavy, secondary trauma type work feel really sustainable and kind of enriching to just like connect with people who are in all different professional and personal backgrounds, but have kind of come together to serve in this specific way. So I can't say enough good things about the volunteers. I think they're incredible human beings, and despite it being pretty intense, heavy subject matter that we're always working through, we also tend to have a decent amount of fun in a calendar year. So we're actually gearing up. This month is National Volunteer Appreciation Month. So every April we have a fun party to celebrate the volunteers. So this year we're renting Central Cinema. It's like a little movie theater in Capitol Hill, and we're going to have like dinner and watch a silly movie. And last year we had a fancy award ceremony. So every year it's a little different, but it's pretty fun. So if you're interested in volunteering, this is like the perfect window to get curious, or if you think someone would be a good fit, because once the application process closes, it's unfortunately kind of a very long wait, since we currently only have the capacity to run 1 recruitment cycle per year. Because as I just mentioned, it's a pretty intense process that we pour things into and just can't do it more than once. Many moons ago, I did this 2 times a year, and that was before I had kids, and I honestly cannot remember how we did that. I don't know if we'll ever go back, but for now, for the foreseeable future, it's a one time a year kind of cadence. So that's the volunteer program, and then that's it. So that's my contact information if you want to take it down really quick. And I know I can send these slides out as well for a follow-up, but I'm going to unshare so I could see your faces and answer any questions that anybody might have.
We have time for just a couple. One in the chat, do you help with getting temporary protection orders in King County District Court?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good quick answer. Somebody, let's see. Oh, does your team support function the same way for victims, regardless of whether a legal case is handled by either the city attorney or the King County prosecutor's office?
Yep, our eligibility is really flexible. We actually can work with survivors who aren't interested in reporting the crime, or who don't want to participate in the legal case. They don't have to live in Seattle or Washington. I mean, typically they are here, but we're really able to respond to people who request our services pretty openly. So That's one of the things that I think distinguishes us from our other partner program, which they're getting assigned cases like from the detective units only. We can kind of like intake things a lot more broadly.
Great. Diane asks, what % of advocates and volunteers are trauma informed from lived experience as domestic violence survivors?
Yeah, we have a lot of survivors who join this team. I would say of all varieties. So childhood survivors of domestic violence, survivors of intimate partner violence, of sexual assault and stalking, and commercial sexual exploitation. So I don't have a percentage off the top of my head, but I want to say like typically in a recruitment cycle, I feel like half of the people or more that I'm talking to have lived experience.
That's great. Well, I think that's all we have time for, but thank you. This has been wonderful. I know everyone's appreciated hearing about this. We've been hoping to get you guys here this year, and we really appreciate it, especially again, doing a couple presentations in one day. That's a lot.
Yeah, my
So,
pleasure.
thank
Thanks for
you
bearing
very
with my
much.
internet. And it was great to share with you all. Please feel free to reach out if you have more questions or if you're interested in applying.
Great. And if you want to send your slides to our email address, we can go ahead and share them when we do the minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Okay. Next up, I believe I saw Casey in the house. Let me find you here, Casey. There you are. Welcome.
How are you?
There you are. You're on.
Oh, it's good to see you again. It's good to see everybody. Thanks for the time. I wanted to start with, I know that there was a request that people wanted to know about our juvenile data dashboard and how that works, where it comes from, and what updates may be coming to it. It's important to start with why we did it. Right now, we're the only county prosecutors or prosecutor's office of any type in the state of Washington that has that level of juvenile data available. And we thought it was important to do just so people can see the work that we're doing. It's something that we started working on last summer. Folks who are on this call regularly will know that we've been given updates on it of how it was in process. And the adult data dashboard is something that we rolled out in 2021. It's important to have that info too for both types of cases. And most importantly, we want people to know that we're willing to talk about any single case. And it's important to look at cases individually because that's what we do in our office. Because when you look at a case individually, you see all kinds of different things that you may not see just from the overall numbers. And that's one of the limitations of the dashboard is you don't see the difference the nuances in the case. For example, statutory referrals are cases that come to us for both juvenile and adult cases from law enforcement, where law enforcement says, we don't think that there's evidence to charge a crime here. And that can sometimes be cases where there's not a suspect identified or where the victim says, I don't want to move forward, or where the initial report is not what is matched in the investigation. Or what also happens too is where you have a case where you certainly believe victims, and even with great police work, you just don't have the information needed to charge a case. Or if what you see frequently with the juveniles, you have children younger than 12 or younger than age 8, which is a different classification under state law. Let me share some documents here that I put together. Zoom won't allow me to.
No, I need to make you a. Hang on. Let me just make you a co-host real quick.
Oh.
Just a second. Okay, you're a co-host now. Congratulations.
Well, look at that.
There you go. Now you have the magic. You can show your slides.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's not slides. They're documents. But let me see if I can just pull up.
But your desktop or whatever they are.
Oh yeah. Let me
show them.
That sounds great. Let me just get that ready. Well, let me pull that up right here. When we created the juvenile data dashboard, there were some state laws that we had to be in or on the right side of in terms of what data we are allowed under the law to share, and also case law. The short way to say it is we can share more information about adult cases than we are able to share about juvenile cases. But that doesn't mean that we're afraid to talk about juvenile cases or the decisions that we make. We are happy, certainly, to talk about those cases and those decisions. I know that Councilmember Dunn has had questions about those, and King County Prosecutor Lisa Mannion just had a great meeting with him yesterday. She's been offering to meet with him since December, and the door is always open. And he had a great conversation with Jimmy Hung, who's the head of our Juvenile Division 2. And we want to keep working with Councilmember Dunn and each of the council members, because I think what will happen, and that's the same for everybody here, when you look at the cases individually, you'll see exactly the reasoning that King County prosecutors had with each decision on a case referral. And so that information will hopefully be helpful. It includes a few different documents. It's a Q&A that we put together for some county leaders back in October of 2023, just last October, that runs down what we're doing in general with cases. And then there are also questions about juvenile sexual assault referrals. How are we handling those, and why are we doing what we do? And so what we did is we looked at all 200, I think it was 270 or 271 referrals that we received in the entire year of 2023. And we put those together because it's important to look at the individual cases, because when you just look at the overall numbers, you think, a common question that we get is, why would you ever do a plea agreement on a case? We don't understand why you would do that. Or, what's the difference in statutory referrals? But when you look at the individual cases, you see the nuances about each case that both police investigators, police are the ones who investigate cases and then refer it to prosecutors, what we see in those charging decisions. It also has a link directly to the data dashboard. That's our first iteration of it. What we have is the adult side has gone through, I think, 2 or 3 or maybe even more updates since it was rolled, probably even more since it rolled out in 2011. And we anticipate the same thing for the juvenile dashboard. We don't expect to have it just be up there and then never go and check it for months or years going forward. Also, one thing that's very encouraging too is the collaboration that we have with different police departments. One thing that our juvenile division has launched is a thing called J-Watch, which is similar to office hours, even though we're not the professors. It is more of an equal relationship, but that's an opportunity for police, if they have general questions about all kinds of things, about interpretations of the law, or how they may conduct interviews, or an individual case or a group of cases, any kinds of questions that they have for prosecutors. We have a weekly call, and that's in addition to the routine calls and emails that we have every day with different police agencies. Most recently, there's been a lot of great communication with Seattle Police and the detectives and officers who work on those cases there, and some great communication with Renton Police, because their chief has raised some understandable concerns about juvenile crime that they're seeing there. And we were just on a great email back and forth this afternoon about the head of our juvenile division and the Renton police chief and others from that department. Really great communication saying, here's who we have headed your way. Here's when we anticipate a booking. Here's what the cases are. And so we can have that great communication. We can take that information before the court and ask for people accused in violent crimes to be reasonably held. And even in routine crimes, if they're not violent, we don't want people to have the misunderstanding or the misperception that you can commit crimes without accountability, regardless of what age you are. And one thing that people sometimes wonder is, how often do you divert cases? And very often the cases that are diverted by our juvenile division are cases that are required to be diverted under state law. That's certainly the case for most misdemeanors. And what we're diverting are the cases that are often not the cases that you see in the news. If you carjack somebody, if you use a gun, if you threaten somebody with a gun at school, those are not cases that we would ever choose to go to diversion. Diversion efforts are more for cases before you pull a gun on somebody, frankly. We want to reach people and have credible messengers from the community reach kids before they hit that extreme level of violence, which is also part of why King County Prosecutor Lisa Mannion and the heads of our juvenile division, Jimmy Hung being the chief, have consistently said for years that, well, it's an ambitious goal to want to have less kids in juvenile detention. The idea that we can, which is from offices separate from ours, that you can completely eliminate the juvenile detention center isn't realistic with the kinds of violent crimes that we see now. We have to have clear protections, not only for the victims of those crimes, but also for the teens involved, which very often don't have ideal circumstances to go to. So it's something that is a thoughtful and aspirational goal, but that's not something that the prosecutors are certainly advocating for overnight or even in the short term because of that important context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to have to move on a little bit. I think we can take a couple quick questions.
Yeah.
Chat. Are there any current initiatives on longer sentencing for fentanyl dealers since so many deaths are resulting?
That's really a question for state lawmakers because they're the ones that handle those. But here's some data that I'm working on right now and our office is working on that might be helpful. So we're looking at every drug case that we've charged so far this year. And the majority of those are fentanyl and meth or one or the other. And so having that data to take to state lawmakers, I think will be pretty helpful. And I'll share that at the next meeting so folks can have that too, just to know what we're seeing and hopefully take that to state lawmakers who can be the deciders on that.
Right.
Because it's a major problem. I think just yesterday we saw 5 overdoses in King County.
Yeah. Now there's another, and I think we touched on this at last month's meeting too, but Felicia's asking about juvenile witnesses not being able to be interviewed in the West Seattle shootings, et cetera. What are the parameters? We have to wrap it up, but if you could just quickly address one of those concerns.
Oh yeah. Probably the best thing I can do is I talked about this with Dave Ross from Cairo Radio a week ago Monday, and Mary Barbosa, who's one of the heads of the unit that handles prosecutions of homicides in our office, she walked through the challenges with that case and with the law and how we're trying to address it. And so I'll share in the chat here a link so you can hear from her directly, and also the notes that I shared on that, which I think will be helpful. She also was the senior prosecutor who talked to Sarah Jean for her article in the Seattle Times.
Okay.
And she can answer it much better than me, I think.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Casey. Sorry to cut you off. You always
No
have
problem.
to share.
I might go along sometimes. Thanks, everybody. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too. Okay, well, we're moving right along. Next up, it's our crime prevention team is stepping back in, and I'm going to spotlight you folks. You have a quick update, but you get lots of time tonight. Congratulations.
We'll make it fast. Yeah, super quick. We just want to announce that we will be doing drug take back on April 27th from 10 to 2 at 3 locations throughout Seattle. We will also be piloting a shred-a-thon portion of the event. Thankful for the Thank you too. See, we're a dual team. Together we make one. Thank you to Iron Mountain for donating shredding trucks. We will be doing it at the North Precinct, the Southwest Precinct. We are also partnering with Seattle University to have a location in our East Precinct. If you're on our block watch list, there will be a flyer sent out next week. Also, we'll be sending one to NPAC so them to disseminate amongst their constituents here. But please be on the lookout for that. Please come, bring your prescription medication that you can have safely disposed of, and please bring any documents, any shredding boxes that you would like to have properly disposed of. Sorry? How many boxes? It's 3. The limit is 3 boxes, the size of a standard banker box. The flyer will have all the information of what can and can't be accepted, but we're really excited. It'll be a drive-through event, so really it's just gonna be a quick drive up. We'll grab your drugs, we'll grab your paper, we'll dispose of that on your behalf, and you'll get on with your morning and get on with your Saturday. But we're really excited to be able to offer this event at 3 locations in the city of Seattle, also with the shred-a-thon. Again, thank you to Iron Mountain for donating those shredding trucks. It'll be April 27th, Kippy. That's a Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2. And again, this will all be on the flyer. that we'll be sending out to Katie, and we'll also be sending it out to all our Block Bunch people, and you'll see it on Nextdoor. You'll see it literally all over the place. You will not be able to miss it. But we hope to see more people there. Please share the information. And that is it. Aha.
Thank you. You said 2 minutes, and I believe you achieved that. Thank you. And it's great to say that they are once again going to be able to join us. We have them coming quarterly, so we'll let you know when the crime prevention folks will be coming back. And as far as getting information out, I want to remind you all that North Precinct Advisory Council now has a Facebook page, and it's connected every time we send you something. So look for it, and that's where we push out a lot of the posters and information. Very quickly, I want to just make sure you know that we have elections coming up. North Precinct Advisory Council holds elections every June for officers, which is president, vice president, and secretary. And if you are interested in participating more actively, we would love to have you. They're beyond the officers. There are also up to 6 members who can be appointed by the officers to be on the executive board. We've had a wonderful board this year. They've done a ton of work, and it's been just really effective. So if you're interested, please consider joining us. So the nomination process goes like this. Next week, we'll send you a notice via email that describes the work of each position. We will ask anyone interested to submit just a little brief paragraph about themselves and why they're interested. And basically, at the May meeting, which is going to be on May 1st this year, is actually when nominations close. So if you're interested, you need to consider it, and you can send questions to the NPAC board. We're happy to answer any. Let you know what it's like working on all these interesting topics. And if you're interested, please let us know by the close of the May 1st meeting. So by 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday, May 1st, nominations close. And then we vote at the June meeting. So whoever we get nominations for, we will share all that between May and June. So you'll have a chance to look at the nominations, and then people who attend the June meeting get to vote. That's it in a nutshell. You'll get something that's much more succinct and clear from the board in the next week, but I just wanted to call that out. And I just want to say it can be challenging, but it's also very interesting. And if you want to make a difference in your community, joining the NPAC board and helping to choose who comes to speak to us and connecting with the police community, it's really rewarding. So I highly recommend it. So there's my 2 cents. And I think, unless one of the other board members wants to tell me that I have forgotten anything, I think we're actually, oh my gosh, 7 minutes early. So if anybody has any questions for me now, I'll take a look in the chat. Let me just see. Somebody's asking. Okay, and the June meeting, yes, Diane, the June meeting will be in person. We try to make our June and September meetings in person, and the rest are on Zoom. Are all in attendance tonight on your mailing list? If you got an email from us with the Zoom link and the agenda, then you're on our email list. So if you're not sure, send us an email and we'll double check. The June meeting venue is to be announced. We don't know yet. I don't know if Captain Agard is still available. There's a question about to address what is happening at Garfield High School and if there is any concern with the same thing happening at North End schools. Captain, are you?
Yep, I'm here. Can you see me? Oh, did my thing. There we go. There we go. Yeah, I know they're on top of that with the shootings there. They still have emphasis patrols up there, and I believe their MP's still out. I don't know of any, I don't know the follow-up details as far as any arrests in any of those, but you know, it's a different mix of things up there. So no, I feel like our schools here are under no threat like that. Not, not to say something could happen, but there's no intel or any reason to believe anything like that is going to happen up here.
Okay. Megan is saying not the shootings, the refugee camps taking over the tennis courts.
Oh, I heard something about that. Are you asking, would the schools allow that to happen up here?
Hey, it's Megan. I'm sorry. Am I still
Oh.
muted?
No,
Nope,
you're
you're
good.
on now.
No, I'm just curious because it seems like it was a very last minute thing and all of a sudden the tennis courts at Garfield High School have been taken over by refugee camps. And I'm just concerned that similar might happen in some of the North End schools without any sort of like heads up. So I was just curious,
Yeah, interesting question. I have good communication with the head of security. I'll give him a ring and inquire about that. That's probably a good question to ask him, just to make sure that we do have a heads up if anything like that is on the horizon.
I think I'm seeing that Sarah might have something to add.
Yeah, Megan, it's not necessarily related to the high school. They're just using that because it's adjacent to where some encampments were. They're not refugees setting up camp. They're people protesting the refugees that were granted asylum within the states, potentially having their funding run out and potentially having to leave the country now. It's a protest and it's expected to stay in South Seattle and not move up north, as it is a protest focused on the downtown area.
but based on what I'm reading it's actually they're setting up tents and they're from the Renton.
Right, it's protesters setting up tents. It's not necessarily the refugees that are setting up tents. It's the protesters. They're doing like a sit-in type thing, and it is expected to stay downtown, not move up north.
Okay, it just seemed, regardless, it's on Seattle Public Schools property and kids can't even use the tennis courts
anymore. South Precinct, they are handling that with Garfield and with our unified care team to get these people removed peacefully. They're engaged with our poet team as well, which is our protest team. So all of that stuff, it's expected to stay in the South Precinct, and it is definitely on their radar, as it was brought up in today's meeting. But it's not expected to move up north. But thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. From what I know, they want to make sure they're close to downtown for the city council meetings too. So.
Okay. Rudy, if it's super quick, you can.
Hey, my friend Felicia has a question. Can you let her speak?
We actually had her put her announcement into the minutes, and we're going to ask her to send us something so we can post it on our Facebook page.
Well, that's unfortunate. Okay.
Well, it's right there in the chat. Everybody can see it. The Community Police Commission is planning a meeting for April 25th at 5:30 p.m. to discuss the SPOG contract. So there you go. Thank you, everybody. It was a lively and interactive meeting as usual. We really appreciate you attending. And again, if you're interested in perhaps participating with the board and helping to form these meetings and, decide who speaks, that would be great. And in the meantime, we will say have a great evening. If the board would stay on, that would be great. And we will wish you all a very good night.